Jack here, and I'm out in the bush on a solo expedition in search of a monster kudu. I've got my solo camping gear, I've got my hunting equipment with me, my viewing and photography equipment with me. The goal on this one is I'm taking 2 nights alone in the bush searching for a monster kudu. Even if we're not able to hunt the kudu, we just want to at least get some good footage of a large kudu in this area. It's really hot, it's really humid. Kudu sighting is incredibly hard. They don't call them the grey ghosts for nothing. The weather at the moment, because of the heat, the kudu will all be in the shade, in the shadows. So towards the later part of the evening and the day, when it starts getting a bit cooler, we should see some more activity. I'm going to set myself up on a ridge and then look down for a number of hours through my spotting scope to see if we can catch any magnificent beasts among the bush. Alright guys, and this is the start of my solo kudu bull operation. Hi guys, as a belter of a day today, my equipment I'll be using primarily in my search for the monster kudu is first my sun hat, thereafter my spotting scope. I'll put this onto a tripod to keep it stable. I have an attachment for my cell phone camera, so if we do spot our monster bull, I'll be able to capture the moment. A backup pair of binoculars if required, and then my Remington 783 chambered in 308. If we come across any destructive causing animals, I will dispatch them with that trusty old bugger. Guys, wish us luck.
Day one, I started on some dirt roads, making my way into the bush towards my vantage point. Very happy to find some kudu tracks early on, some spoor, some droppings and tracks on the ground. This is a great sign. A little later on, while still walking towards my vantage area, I bumped into some females up on a hill. This was really cool to see. The kudus were out and about, and now I just had to find some males. Finally getting into my vantage point, I set up my spotting scope and began glassing for a number of hours. In the early part of the day, I saw a number of female kudus, but no males. It was only later in the day, when the sun went down a bit, did the bigger males arrive. I couldn't contain my excitement. In a fury, I grabbed my cell phone and attached it to my spotting scope to get as much footage as I possibly could. I then set about trying to identify the amount of kudu males in this particular group. There were a few really young males mixed in with some older sub-adult to adult males. An easy way to identify a male kudu from a female kudu: the males have horns, the females do not. The younger males can be identified due to the lack of mass on their body, and they will only have typically 1 or 1.5 to 2 curls on their horn set. This bull in the center had exceptional potential. His first curl was exceptionally wide, and his tips were just beginning to turn inwards. With a few more years, he was going to be an exceptional specimen. The ivory on his tips were easily identifiable from this distance as well. Your older bulls, their tips will get rounded and blunt, and the younger ones will have a far sharper point. This angle gave a beautiful comparison between the bull at the back and the bull in the front. The bull at the back, 3 distinctive curls with the tips pointing inwards, and the one in front, a massive bodied bull, its tips not completely pointing inwards just yet. And there we have a very young male kudu on the left, and that's identifiable due to the lack of any curls and the far smaller body size. Another angle of a different bull in the herd, you could see how deep his curls were, forming almost an hourglass. A few more years on that particular bull as well would give an exceptional trophy. The bull shaking its head on the left has a beautiful figure, like an hourglass in its horns. Here we see the larger bulls moving off to the right, and then you can kind of see the size of those horns next to one another. As the kudu began to move in and out of the bush, it became quite difficult to keep a track of which bulls were which. So I grabbed a notepad and just made some key identifiable features of the bulls that I was looking at. Each of these camera angles offered me a different perspective on the kudu horns, allowing me to give a better judgment on their age and their size. Keys when aging kudu bulls: number 1, the mass on their body. Number 2 is the quality of their horn tips. typically the direction they're pointing in. The older males will have their tips pointing inwards, upwards, and sometimes forward, developing a fourth curl. The condition of the tips, whether they're rounded or sharp, as well as the ridge in the horn. Your older bulls will have a very deep ridge. Your younger bulls might have a pink hue on the first curl as the horn comes out of the skull. Your more mature bulls will have a darker grey colour on their coats around the neck and shoulders due to balding and hair loss. With daylight quickly fading, I began to lose track of the bulls as they moved deeper into the bush. I took down some quick notes for me to reference at a later stage should I see these bulls again. I then began to round up my gear, get a little more footage, and then head on back to camp to round off the day. Hi guys, end of day one. Oh, it's been a long day. Amenities for the night are memory foam pillow. If we're going to be hot, at least we can be a little comfortable. My light that I'm using has an actual fan on it, so it doubles as a light and a fan, and it's super slim, fits in my bag. That's my other little liberty, my bunk bed or my stretcher bed. That's a little soft. I'm not going to even put out a sleeping bag. It's just too hot. And I hope the bugs spare me this evening because I can already hear them flying into the tent because of the light. The goal is going to be get on the road, get some tracks on. Let's get up to our vantage point. I've got a place scoped out that I think will be a good vantage point. Get on the spotting scope and then scope for as many hours as we can to see any kudu bulls. If I see any large kudu bulls, I've also brought up my drone with me. I'll take the drone up and see if we can get some better footage of the actual males. But that's tomorrow. Wish me luck, and I'm off to bed. Good night. Sleep tight. So hunting in the humidity of Africa, there's a few things I can't do without. One is sunscreen, good hat, and my trusty old water bottle. You walk for hours, dehydration can set in, and heat stroke at any moment. People highly underestimate this. Whenever you're in the bush, always make sure you've got some sunscreen, a good hat, take rests when you need it, especially if you're feeling dizzy, and keep water on you. I headed down the path following some kudu spoor. The tracks are easily identifiable, rugby ball in shape and approximately 7.5 centimeters long, with their rear track stepping on their front track. We call this a double register. Their droppings are either clumped together or loose individual pieces, somewhat of an oval shaped dropping. Okay guys, so when tracking kudu, some tips you could use. So what I'm doing is, first of all, understand the terrain you're hunting in, know the environment, know the type of terrain that kudu like. So on this particular environment, there are some really steep hills. There is a lot of bush. There's a lot of cover. So you've got to look for the opening patches where you kind of see the male kudus hanging around towards the edges of the opening. Male kudu are very smart. Unlike the females that will venture out into the open far quicker, the males are far more cautious and will often freeze if you spook them or if they're aware of your presence instead of just running. Very often you can walk straight past a massive bull and never know he was even there. They don't call them the grey ghost for nothing. The color of their skin, especially when they get that dark grey color, completely hides them in this type of terrain. So you've got to be quiet. You've got to be super attentive to your environment. Look within the shadows, look under the trees, look within the bush to try and find these monsters. I'll be walking some roads, some dirt roads, to first pick up some fresh tracks. I'll show you what kudu tracks look like, and thereafter we'll make our way deeper and deeper into the bush until we reach our scoping or viewing points, where I'll sit for a number of hours to just glass and try and find some kudu. Stopping regularly to keep yourself hydrated is always key. Paying attention to your wind when tracking is important. You always want to position yourself so that the wind is not blowing on your neck, but rather in your face with the animals in front of you. I got to my vantage point, set up my equipment, and began the day glassing. A little later on in the morning, a beautiful sight. The Kudus were coming out with the Nyala bulls. There was a group of Nyala bulls alongside a group of Kudu bulls. These two spectacular antelopes of Africa are a beautiful sight to see. Nyalas and Kudu feeding together. I set about to try and guesstimate the length on these Kudu bulls. That can be quite a daunting task, bearing in mind these animals were approximately 300 meters away from me. But there are a few keys that I used to try and guesstimate them as accurately as I could. Points to consider: number one, length of the overall horns in a straight line, the width and depth of the first curl, the length between the curls, and the position and length of the tips. These keys are what I try to use to guesstimate the length. This male kudu does not have a very tall set of horns, and its curls aren't very deep either. It does have quite nice ivory tips, but overall not a very large specimen. You will notice both of these male bulls have begun to experience hair loss on the neck, turning that distinctive grey color. Here we have two bulls side by side, and you can see the comparison in the length of their horns as well as the mass in their bodies. The one in the rear far larger, the horns already far wider on the first curl. However, it still has a bit more growth as the tips are just beginning to turn inwards. A beautiful hourglass shape. This kudu bull was the same kudu that we had noticed the day before. A very distinctive set of horns. As this bull turns its head facing the camera, you can see how wide that first curl comes out towards the end of its ears, indicating a very beautiful trophy. As it got a bit hotter during the day, the kudu began to make their way back into the bush. I decided to pack up my gear and head back to camp for some lunch. Okay guys, great morning so far. We spotted some beautiful kudu bulls. There's bulls with 3 curls. There's some young bulls in the group. So I've sat with my spotting scope. I've got some good footage with the spotting scope. I'm going to head back to camp, have some lunch and have a shower, do some laundry, and then I'll come back in the afternoon, bring my drone along with me and see if we can get any better photographs of them from the air. Let's go. Exceptionally hot in the day, so I've given it a break. Most kudu will go into the shade, especially when it's this hot. Snack time in the bush, lunch, and it's a South African classic. Doritos in Albany brown bread. The stuff of champions. Kudu finding fuel this. Incredibly hot out here in the bush, and I'm going to show you guys how I take a shower in the bush. Get a bag, a little pocket shower, fill it with water, leave it in the sun. It gets nice and warm, tie it up to a tree, and then you get to have a lovely shower. Got my little handy body wash, and yeah, I am beginning to smell a bit stronger than the kudu we're after, so I'm in need of a shower. Oh, the water is so warm because it's so bloody hot outside. Having a nice shower after a long day in the bush. Clean socks. Nothing smells better.
Nothing better than fresh clothes. So now I'll use that as well for my laundry. I've got some water left in the shower. We'll do some laundry and we'll hang it up. I've done my chores for the day, had a shower, put some fresh clothes on, and I'm about to hit my viewing spots again to see if we can find a big kudu.
Back out on the road again. I took my drone along with me. I wanted to get some better aerial footage of the bulls if they came out later on in the day. I set up my spotting scope and then sent the drone out to kind of see if I could spot anything from the air. So I'm utilizing the drone today to simply survey and have a look at the types of animals in this area. I'm not hunting on this particular day. This is purely a surveillance mission. Looking from the air, it gives you a very different perspective of the landscape and does take a particular eye to be able to locate the different animals. Toward the later part of the afternoon, I began to identify some bulls slowly emerging from the thick bush. As I looked closer, more and more bulls began to appear, slowly eating and making their way out into the clearing. With daylight fast fading, I was so privileged to have had the opportunity to find these beautiful bulls. As they headed back into the bush, I bid them farewell and began to conclude my expedition.
I'm just going to take you through some of the things that I've used for my solo hunt in this particular trip. On the bag I used the I don't even know how to pronounce this, Eco VE. I bought this a while ago as a go bag, but it kind of works out as my camping solo hunting bag as well. I like to have all my equipment to be able to fit onto this particular bag. So for my sleeping, I've got my sleeping bag that goes at the bottom of the bag. I've got my tent. The first ascent is really quick to put up, really quick to take down, and it comes in a pretty small package that fits on here perfectly. And this ultralight Natural Instincts stretcher bed that I've been using now for the last 5 expeditions. It's really cool when it works. I have found, however, on the legs, it's supposed to have a carrying capacity of 140 kilograms. I am definitely not 140 kilograms. And I've noticed there's been some cracking on some of the plastic bits of the leg. So I'm going to have to return this one. It worked well when it was working, but I'm kind of disappointed that I've had that problem so soon. Maybe they will hopefully refund me or give me a new one that actually works. And thereafter, my bag will contain all my clothes. For my cooking gear, I did come off quite a severe tummy bug, so I didn't pack a lot of actual big food or MREs, but normally I take MREs in boiling water, prepare them accordingly with a little solo camping stove and gas canister. I packed a lot of snacks for this particular journey, so a lot of patkos, cashew nuts, biltong, and some fruit. My water, I've got the live straw, so if I need water I can always live straw from the river and then boil any other water that I need. This was a 2-day expedition. It's not an incredibly long solo hunt, so everything that I needed could fit into this particular bag. This is not a usual style of hunting in South Africa, going out solo. The area that I'm in does have a lot of snakes. There are a large variety of mambas, there are pythons, etc. So when you're out here in the bush, there's no communication via cell phone. So a very important thing for me is my Garmin InReach satellite communicator. I then always keep with me my Garmin GPS in case I shoot an animal and need to put down any markers to come back for it later, or if I lose the track. I got my binoculars, my Vortex in my pouch. Also keep in there some downwind wind detectors. So this is just to gauge the direction of the wind when we're making any stalk. My cell phone fits in here, as well as the good old hand sanitizer. Very important. Keep your hands clean so you don't have to get sick in the bush. There is nothing worse than puking your guts out all alone in the bush. So always keep yourself as hygienic as possible. But that's what's all on my pack. I've got my side, I've got my Glock 17 with me for added protection, my flashlight, my knife, and an extra pouch for some rifle ammo. I've got my Remington 308 on this particular expedition. So it's been a really hardy rifle for me. I don't mind banging it around and giving it the old scratch or two. It's got a lot of personality, and I've had a lot of adventures and stories with it. And that, guys, is the end of my expedition. It's been an amazing 2 days. I spent the end of 2024 in the bush. We were able to successfully get some eyes on some really beautiful kudu bulls. I feel invigorated, I feel connected with nature, and I've had a great time out here. Learned a lot, as I always try to do every time I'm in the bush. Guys, if you enjoy these kind of videos and it's something that you found interesting, please leave a like and a subscribe if you haven't already. And I look to be bringing us a lot more outdoor hunting related videos for 2025.